Hey everyone, welcome to my show, My So-Called Fabulous. I'm Tiffany. Welcome to the show. And wow, do I have something for you today. I have watched this woman from afar, and lo and behold, we have mutual friends. Thank you, Dr. Karen Lindsay, that has introduced us. Social media, we talk about that all the time, how we connect, and it's a beautiful thing. And she reached out to me and told me she was coming to my hometown, Fort Worth. And she said, yes, y'all. She said, yes, she'd come on the podcast. So you are in for a treat because so many of you ask me about dating. And I'm 58. After talking to this woman, I don't know if I will be convinced if something happened to my husband, I would want to date again. I'm saying no. But everyone, I have to introduce you. I'm going to show you the cover of the book. Mom, you need to just get laid. So there you have it. Everyone, welcome to the show. We're going to call her two names and we're going to really get into the nitty gritty. But Kate, Ann. So Kate and Ann, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. I am delighted to be here and I love being back in Fort Worth. So thank you for the invitation.
You are so welcome. So, all right, let's talk about this. So let's back up. This is your book. Hysterical. Everyone, you have to read this book. And the many men, is that their names?
15 men.
Yes.
15 song titles, 15 chapters, 15 clues, and they're all true stories. Oh. And this is the group that made the book. There was a whole other group that never got into the book.
Didn't make the cut?
Didn't make the cut.
Hey, wait. I'm going to call her, y'all, her pen name is Kate Somerset, and that's how I've known her. Her name is Ann Louden. So you may know her from Fort Worth, and she moved to New York 6 years ago. And tell me, we're going to get into the nitty gritty of the book. You went through a divorce that was public.
Correct. Right, exactly. Married 24 years in Fort Worth. And in those years, really got involved in the community and had a wonderful experience. But when the marriage ended, I thought, do I stay in Fort Worth or do I do something harder and more challenging, but where I wouldn't necessarily know what the script was going to be? Because had I stayed in Fort Worth, I think I could have pictured what my life might have been like after being married and being in a prominent marriage. Mm-hmm. So I bit the bullet and I left the work that I had done for 30 years at TCU, mm-hmm. which was my home school as well.
Mm-hmm. Go Frogs. We're going to both throw up our sign here.
Exactly. And I decided I'd start my own company. And so I moved to New York and started over again. And I never intended to date, Tiffany, and that was really not part of it at all. No. And then I started, and that became the journey for you to have that book in your hand.
And book. Okay. How in the world, Ann, did you come up with the name Mom, You Just Need to Get Laid?
Well, so that is obviously written in third person. So that would suggest that my child said, mm-hmm. Mom, you just need to get laid.
Yes.
And the way she said it to me was when I was still living in Fort Worth and I was separated. She and I were kind of rattling around the house and fighting like mothers and daughters. I know you have a daughter. I don't know if you ever had
same
a tussle.
Age about,
yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But my daughter and I were like oil and water when she was a teenager. Not so much anymore. Mm-hmm. And at that time, it was really tough because she didn't know what was going to happen next. And I didn't know what was going to happen next. And so there was all that friction. Mm-hmm. And she'd brought a group of friends home to celebrate at 1 a.m. with In-N-Out hamburgers. And they took over my computer chair in the kitchen when I was working. And so I had to urge her out of the chair. And I kept saying, honey, I need to finish this project. And she said, Mom, you're so bossy. Why are you always telling me what to do? You know, you don't have a life. All you do is ever work. You know, you need to figure this out. And I said, well, no matter what I do, you need to get out of the chair and take your friends to your room. And as she did, she turned around and looked at me with her entourage. And she said, Mom, you know what? You just need to get laid.
What?
And that's what I said. What? And so I turned back around. She turned around and she said, you know, that's it. You just need to find some joy in your life. That was her interpretation of what joy would look like, you know, getting laid, I suppose.
Yeah.
But she also said the thing that switched the conversation, which was, you know, you need to find somebody to love you before you get too old.
Oh,
And so
wait. How old was your daughter when she presented
she was
you this?
18 when she said
Okay,
that.
there it is.
And in some ways, she's an old soul. In other ways, she's a typical teenager.
Mhm.
But then there was this continued banter back and forth. And I couldn't imagine. In that moment, I was horrified. I mean, the thought of an intimate relationship when I wasn't even thinking about dating, and I hadn't dated in 30 years, I couldn't even picture this. And so she says this toss-off phrase to me, and she won't leave the kitchen. And I said, okay, look, you're 18. By the time you're 21, I'll get that done, okay? And so we did a high five, and she left.
And that's the beginning of the book. That was
it. And I wasn't planning. I still wasn't planning to date. That was the intro in the book. That explains the title.
That explains the title.
But then I got to New York and very focused on my work. And within about 3 months, I thought, I don't know this city, 8 million people. If I could build community, maybe one way to do it is through dating. So in the Texas, you'll understand this, in Texas, we go big, right?
Yeah.
So I said, instead of joining one online dating site, how about 5? Would 5 work out? So that's what I did. And it was like drinking from a fire hose. The first week I had 8 dates in 7 days. And I thought, this is going to be a blast. Part of it is really fun and part of it is really challenging. And so it was sometime after that, 18 months later, I was with some girlfriends at brunch in the city, and they said, your stories are hilarious. You need to write a book. Yes. And that was the beginning of my thinking about writing a book.
Wow. Amazing and hysterical. You guys, you've got to read this. I'm going to Mexico in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to dive in deeper.
Good. I'd love to hear. You can text me about every man, ask every question. I'll answer it. Maybe.
I can't wait to hear this. Now, why did you select, because you're so involved and integrated into the Fort Worth community and TCU, our school, why New York? That just sounds frightening to me.
It was frightening. It was a big leap, but my decision was based partially on professional circumstances. I knew when I left an organization, if I was going to start a company to work with nonprofits, I needed to go where the nonprofits were. And New York is the largest city with the largest number of nonprofits. And so that was the logical reason that maybe that's a place that I could set up the business successfully. But I also love theater. And my daughter had been at boarding school outside of New York, so I'd spent a lot of time in New York. And I'd gone there as a tourist. And even when I was a teenager, I lived with a family in New York for a month because I did a performance with a group at Carnegie Hall.
Wow.
And so I fell in love with New York at that point and thought, if I could ever live in this city, I don't even know for how long, I would figure it out. And that's what I did.
Wow. Okay. All of these men, that is real men.
These
right?
were all real men.
Real dates.
Real dates, real stories. And as I said, they didn't all make the book. I've had several who realize now that I've come out of the closet as being the author of the book, who have then bought a copy and said, but I'm not in the book. I mean, they've texted me and said,
you're kidding.
No, I'm serious. And one person, I said jokingly, but sort of seriously, Bob, you're just not that interesting. And so if in fact there'd been enough content that I could have built a chapter around him,
yes.
I would have.
I mean, in every walks of life you dated. I mean.
Well, I didn't say no very often because my attitude was, I'll never know about what a train conductor does.
Yes.
I'll never know what a sailor does. These were the kinds of people I wouldn't have met in Fort Worth for certain. Mm-mm. And dating in Fort Worth after a divorce, let's be frank, that wouldn't have been an easy situation. Mm-hmm. And as I said, I didn't think I would, but nevertheless, I would have shut that door. I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I had the opportunities that I did.
I mean, okay, I have to ask, is there someone from the book that's still in your life? Like, you can't say that.
Kate never kisses and tells. So, but if you're asking Ann that question, that's a different question. And what I say to people is, you could look on my social media. There might be a clue there.
That's true. Yeah. Everybody, you have to go to her social media, her personal one, not the book, but Ann Louden Ann, and you can see if any of them may be.
You can see if you can see a man there with me in some pictures.
Oh my gosh, that's exciting. That's exciting. Okay. What was the process in writing? I have written 3 books and cookbooks, different process, totally. And so what is the process? I mean, how did you birth this book?
What a great question. The process is harder for writing under a pen name than for writing in a straightforward fashion, and you're attaching your name, your brand, your reputation to it. So the first answer to the question is this book was done in a very unconventional way. Remember, I said I didn't really think I was going to ever date, and then I didn't really think I was going to write a book about dating. And when I was challenged to do it, I love dares, and I usually try to accept them somehow. So I first drafted one story and shared it with some friends. It was for the Modern Love column in the New York Times.
Okay.
It didn't get chosen, but the tone of it and the style of it was such that people who read it loved it and said, okay, if you can write a whole book like this, it's going to be amazing. So the way I wrote it was that on Sunday afternoons, I dictated a man a chapter. So every one of these 15 chapters was done on 15 Sundays. And that's not to say that I didn't go back and revise and spend more time on that chapter, but I didn't type this book on my phone. I dictated the book, which is almost an impossible thing. I look back on it and think, how did I do that? But it was because I was trying to create these conversational stories and I was building them from text chains. Wow. So I used two phones. I had one phone that had all the text chains saved in it and my other phone that I was dictating to. And I put it together that way. And it was somewhat cohesive. Obviously, I had to do some serious edits when I got it onto the computer, but that was the process. Now the Kate Somerset name is even harder. So I'm writing in a pen name. I decided I'm going to do this. And I think, okay, well, what should my name be? And I thought, okay, I need a name that sounds like it's got gravitas and personality and this person might have written other books perhaps, because it needs to be that kind of aura. My middle name is Catherine and I loved the name Kate. So that was a good first syllable, good sound. And then I wanted the alliteration of a last name that had a T in it. I lived in the building, the Somerset. So my pen name became Kate Somerset.
Isn't that amazing? And you hid that since the book 2021.
That's right.
For 2 years.
And I had to create an avatar for my face
that
had to be designed. And I had a designer in Boston that I loved. She did all the illustrations in the book. She did the book cover and she did my avatar, and she'd never done an avatar before. I didn't know anything other than an animated face character.
Sure.
And so I went into the CVS at the corner of 71st and 1st in Manhattan on the Upper East Side where my apartment building is. And I looked at the Clairol hair color boxes and took 15 photos of 15 hairstyles with people's faces in them, obviously, and said, okay, this is what I like about this person's eyes, this person's expression. This is what we need to get to. And so that's how we, over a number of iterations, drew Kate's face.
Oh my gosh. So if you're watching us on YouTube, here is the cover of the book. I'm assuming that's you sitting
That's
here.
Me sitting on the words.
I'm going to turn this over. Here's the avatar of Ann Kate. And I keep saying that, but there she is. And when I saw that and I went to your website, I was like, kind of looks like her. But you know what I mean? But I mean, so does a lot of other people like that.
Exactly.
So why did you come out?
Well,
Valentine's Day this year, a month ago.
Yes, right. Well, when I used the pen name, I did it for 3 reasons. The first was I thought I could write better in third person as Kate, talking about these men at arm's length. It just gave me some flexibility as a writer to be able to do that more effectively. I also wanted to convince anybody that was stuck either in a transition in life or as a single person wondering if they could ever date again in midlife, because that's darn scary, that they could. And my phrase was, anybody can be Kate Somerset. It's a lot harder to say anybody can be Ann Louden. That sounds really goofy. So that gave me the ability to be able to say that, to use that phrase. And then I'm also working on a book about leaders, connectors, and that was going to be under my name. And how confusing is that to have one book about leadership and another book about dating? There's maybe a little bit of schizophrenia going on, but of course there has been with me living as Kate all these, months. So the word was getting out that I was Kate, because although you pledge people to secrecy, people love to tell secrets.
Oh.
And in Fort Worth, I found out that the few people that knew meant a whole lot of people knew, and then a lot more people knew. And so I thought I better control the narrative, because what I want people to know is not that Ann Louden left Fort Worth and dated a bunch of people and wrote about it. Mm-hmm. I want them to know that I wanted to share my story because I want to encourage other people to be resilient. Mm-hmm. That's really what the lesson of the book is.
Right. A lot of, we've done several dating through the decades, dating at, with Fort Worth Magazine, and I did, at 360 Magazine, we did a dating series, and it's difficult in your 40s, I know, and here, I dated, I met Greg in my 40s, and I swore I'd never get married again. I'm like, I'm not doing this again. Are you kidding me?
Yes.
But, I'm sure you have heard this multiple times, and you are living it. What was your anxiety about dating? Did you have anxiety?
Oh, absolutely. My first thought truly was, will anybody find me attractive?
For sure.
That's the first thing you think about, because as an adult, you don't have the same advantages as a, sort of a younger, naive person. You've lived a lot of life. Your story's complicated. And part of what you offer to someone else in a relationship or even a, dating experience is your story. And there's a lot you have to be able to share in a way that's compelling. So I thought, am I going to be attractive? I don't mean just physically, but just mentally, who I am, who I am, what I believe in, my values. Is this going to be a match of interest to somebody else? So that was the first bit of anxiety. The second is going to sound superficial, but you and I both love clothes. And so it was this, okay, what am I going to wear on a date?
Right.
What do I know how to flirt? What am I going to say on a date? One of my favorite Amazon reviews of this book was somebody said that I had taught them how to flirt. And so I love that because I didn't know I knew how, but apparently I must. And so awesome. There was that anxiety. And then I also worried about the title of the book suggests that there's a lot more racy content than there really is. It's PG, and I tell readers, use your imagination.
Right.
I'm not going to feed it all to you. Just use your imagination. But I did worry, okay, what is it going to be like to transition from being married, divorced, alone, and thinking that could there be some romance in my life? And what would that look like? And would I be comfortable? How would that work? There's a lot of anxiety around that. And the other part is, just as my daughter said, you need to find somebody to love you before you're too old. There's this notion that women of a certain age aren't attractive, aren't lovable, aren't appealing. And I wanted to debunk that. I dated men that were older and younger and the same age as I am. But I never revealed my age because that was, I didn't go there. But I had men that would say to me, I am so glad that you've lived the life you've lived because you bring so much wisdom to our conversation, rather than, the thought is men want somebody that would be 20 years younger.
Sure.
And yes, there are those men, but there are an awful lot of men that aren't in that category.
Yeah.
And I love discovering that.
That is so cool because that's what people think. I have had women on this show in their 40s that are banging their head against the wall because they're too old, or they'll go out to, or they're on a dating app and they're bypassed. And I agree. And the reason I started this podcast was I have had success in my life and I've had failures. I've learned more from my failures that I could, and I have had therapists on this show. Stop saying failures. That's what they were, people. You know what I'm saying? So
absolutely,
I wanted to share my wisdom and all of the things that have gone on in my life, and being transparent. And it's difficult. I mean, it is.
It is. And you're vulnerable. That's the other part of telling a story like this. My revealing how I responded to and related to 15 people I'd never known in my life, that's a lot of vulnerability to share. But I think if you bring your authentic self into relationships, people can spot it. And it's a good exercise for us to really dig down deep and find out who we are.
Thinking of dating 15 men is exhausting to me. What was the time span over this?
About 2 years.
About 2.
Yeah.
Okay, that's better.
And I will say that some of the chapters, some of the 15 men in the book represent one date.
Right.
And some of them represent more than one or multiple dates, and even maybe the start of a relationship or something. Some of the stories are romantic, some are sad, some are funny, some are, gosh, but two ships passing in the night. We just weren't in the right place at the right time for each other. Mm-hmm. There's those kinds of stories. There's a lot of fun in the book.
There is a lot of fun in the book. Y'all, you absolutely have to get this book and read it. We're going to give you information where you can find it. What do you want readers, men and women, I mean, in every age, can enjoy this book? Our daughters that are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. What do you want them to take away with this book? What's your message?
My message is believe in yourself. You can do so much more than you think you can if you put yourself to the test. This is really a book for people that are stuck, that do not believe in themselves, that do not see any other version of themselves but the one that they have in that moment. And that's where that's how we end our lives, not in terms of end our lives in the days we're living, but in the attitude we bring to thinking about the future. If we can think of the future as big an adventure as we might have thought of it when we were in our teens or in our 20s, because we don't stop living really until the day we die. You can shut it down if you want to early, but then what have you gained? Mm-hmm. I feel like there's so much more out there. Like, this is fantastic. I get to meet you. I've known about you and what you've done for the longest time. And this moment wouldn't have happened if I hadn't written that book.
I know.
So that's fun too.
It is. It is happenstance too. Ann and I were talking at the beginning of the show before we started the show. And we were talking how we know each other and our paths crossing. And you shared, we met a long time ago.
Oh, we met in a dressing room.
Y'all, listen.
Well, I still have been racking my brain. What was the store, the clothing store? But we were each trying on something in our respective dressing rooms and came out in the center. And I think we're asking each other how we looked and whatever we were thinking about buying.
Right.
And that's such a girl thing to do, isn't it?
Of course.
And then we compare the TCU notes, and we were thinking about who we knew and all of that.
Yes.
And that's always fun.
And you meet people along the way, but then you come back together, just like in your book with dating, it may not be the right time. And when you and I met, we had different lives at the time. We're very, the same city, everything, philanthropic and working. But it's interesting now we've come back, and y'all, we're going out for a glass of wine or so tonight. So
yes, we are.
Yes, we are. But what did you learn, Ann, about yourself in this book? Like, what did you discover something that you just didn't know? Or
well, one of the things that was really a lesson that was an epiphany for me is that I was lovable. I didn't really know that until I heard it from some of these 15 men. Not in those words necessarily. I mean, I did hear those words, but that was so empowering for me to be able to see myself reflected in new relationships, new friendships. I knew that in terms of my work, that I had been successful here in this community and was very grateful for all the opportunities I had to be engaged and involved. But I didn't know about, on the personal side, if I was really someone that could be loved.
Wow.
And so I learned that I can.
Isn't
that was an amazing gift to me.
Did you think that did you really think that had you convinced yourself you could not, or you just weren't sure?
I just wasn't sure.
Mm-hmm.
We all need affirmations in our lives. And I got so much affirmation from being in New York and meeting people that were new to me and that could share a perspective that maybe I hadn't heard. And I really loved that. That made me feel whole. And so that was something that I learned about myself. I also learned I must have an endless curiosity about people, because I never got bored with this dating exercise, even when I knew in the first 10 minutes that the person was someone that I wouldn't go out with again.
Right.
I still enjoyed getting to know them.
Yes.
There's a chapter in the book called Cupido the Conductor. Every man's name is made up.
Yes. I was going to ask you that.
Yes, but not what they did for a living. And so I met this train conductor online who was effusive in his text communication to me, 15 exclamation points, lots and lots of questions that just were a little off. And I had decided I wasn't necessarily going to go out with him. And I thought, what a snob. You can go out with a train conductor. What's wrong with you? So I did. And there was great joy in learning about how the trains run in New York City. He took me to the bowels of Penn Station to show me the secret staff bathroom. I'm probably the only person in Fort Worth that knows where that bathroom is in Penn Station. But I got introduced to all of the conductors and engineers. I got to see the workings of how Penn Station works. Those are the kinds of things that you don't get to have. If you don't take a chance on somebody else. Right. Now that wouldn't have been a relationship that would have worked.
Right.
But I'm glad I said yes. I'm glad I went.
Dating apps. Greg and I have been married 12, but 15 probably together. And before Greg, I was hyper dating. I really was. And I just like, let's go. I was at that phase of my life. I'm going to date. And I went on a dating app, and I had the attitude you have. I loved it. Did I meet one man I wanted to marry? No, I did not. But I met the nicest men, the most fabulous men. Just it wasn't our time or anything, but I really did enjoy that.
Yes.
And it's so people that I know it's different now. It's the act. It was online I was on the computer.
Right.
It wasn't an app, but I just was telling my daughter, she gets very discouraged now because dating is just not what it was when you and I were younger.
It's very transactional in many ways.
Yeah. And it's a text. And so I'm asking her, so have you met this guy? She goes, nope, just talking through text. You've never met this guy. So then they go, and I said, you spent all this time, and not just her, all this time communicating via text when you go the first time, I'm out. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
It's true.
Yeah, I would always find a way to move from text to a personal visit, a telephone call, a visit, because I didn't want to waste the time texting. Although if I hadn't had all the texts that I had, I couldn't have built the book.
No.
Because they come from real conversations. I didn't make any of the conversations up in the book.
Mm-mm.
They're exactly what was said, either by me or the other person.
That's amazing. So my point is, and of course I'm not dating, but I think there's a benefit to dating apps and dating, online dating, whatever you call it. I don't even know because I'm not dating. But I do think there's a benefit in that you can meet fabulous, fabulous people. Obviously, all the people. Anthony Anderson, the actor, y'all. Listen, Levi the lawyer, Saul the sailor.
Yes.
Nick the neighbor. Yikes.
He was 2 doors from me in my building in New York.
Oh my goodness. Oh gosh. So great. So, Ann, are you a full-time author, or do you have?
No, I'm not a full-time author.
Okay.
I have, my work is in nonprofit fundraising consulting.
Yes.
That's a long
mouthful.
That's great. Yes. So I love the chance to work with nonprofits whose missions are very different from one another, and to help their staff and their volunteers succeed. There's so many great causes, and I know you're involved in so many causes as well. And I think that's where we have our biggest impact. That's where our lives can be the most meaningful.
I agree. Y'all, yesterday or a couple of days ago, and came by my home, and there was a lot of flurry going on because we were hosting a JDRF fundraiser, a donor cocktail party, and she knew what we were doing.
I knew exactly. I saw that sprucing up outside, and I said, I recognize what this looks like.
Yeah, caterers coming in and out. So yes. So we have that passion of philanthropy. I'm sorry, I couldn't even spit it out, but we do. We share that, and that's just so wonderful because this is what has to be done in the world too.
Absolutely. That's how we build our legacy. Yeah. I think is finding a way to give back.
Absolutely, give back 1,000%. Okay, so this book, y'all, I'm so excited about it. It's just so neat to bring you on the show, because my goal is to help people, always help people. And, with this is fun. This is fun. We are not, we're not curing heart disease or anything like that, but this is fun, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate where you went, because I've been through a couple of divorces, and they stung. They do. And you want people to know there's life beyond divorce.
I absolutely do. And there is. There definitely is.
There is. There is. Where can we find and get this book?
Well, the book is on Amazon, and you can get a print book, multiple print books for your friends, your family, everybody that you know, and they don't have to be single. It's also an ebook if you prefer that, and then on Audible for the audiobook. And I have to give a shout out to my audiobook narrator. Her name is Laura Patinkin. She's a New York actress. Her cousin is Mandy Patinkin, and lots of people are Mandy Patinkin fans. And Laura and I have become great friends since she narrated the book. And she's even captured my voice, which is amazing. I have loved that because it couldn't be me since it was a pen name. So I'm delighted that she was the one who did it.
Well, great. We're going to link the book in the show notes, and I'm going to have this on my Instagram feed as well. We can find you. Kate Somerset is your Instagram.
Exactly.
And Facebook, Kate Somerset author. Again, we'll link all this. And of course, y'all go to Louden Ann's Instagram and see.
Do some sleuthing.
Who made the cut for sure. Do you miss Fort Worth?
I do miss Fort Worth, but luckily for me, I have some clients here now.
Oh, good.
And so I'm coming back, at least for the short term, about once a month.
So
isn't that great? My hairdresser here and I have reconnected because I get to be more consistent, and I didn't have that opportunity before.
But you love New York.
Yes. Who doesn't love New York, right? I think New York is fabulous, but Fort Worth is really always going to be my home in many ways. So I'm glad to get to be back here.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm just look forward to doing more things with you and talking to you more. And what a great friendship already.
Well, thank you for the invitation to be here.
Absolutely. Y'all, make sure you go over to YouTube, because we're on there and we are doing wonderful things, not just this podcast, but so much more. But follow me on there, and please let us know what you want to hear, and rate and review, subscribe, do all the things for sure. And follow along, everyone, and everyone have a wonderful day and keep being fabulous.